Don't look, just tell me. What percentage is your cell phone battery on right now? I bet you can come pretty close. But what if I asked you, what is your battery running on right now? Your mental battery. That is a question Calm CEO David Koh is using to change how we talk about mental health. His new book is called Recharge, Boosting Your Mental Battery One Conversation at a Time. I'm Deirdre Fitzpatrick, and on this Dying to Ask, how to assess your mental energy and what to do when your battery runs low. Take Dying to Ask on the go by downloading the audio version on Apple or Spotify, or you can watch my conversation with David Koh right here. David, welcome to the Dying to Ask podcast.
Thank you for having me. So excited.
Okay. Oh, I'm so excited to talk to you. Disclaimer, I've been using Calm and other meditation apps for years, but I have always wondered how you guys do what you do. So why don't we just start by talking about how you became the CEO of Calm? And what was that interview like?
Well, I've known the two founders for many years prior. And I've always been a fan of their company and what they stand for, which is to make the world healthier and happier. I could tell you myself, being the CEO of Calm, I am not very calm. So that interview was not a calming interview. And I often tell people that. But it is something where it was such an easy conversation where we both talked about how we could think about building a brand, which they did, that millions of people just love, where it's had over 150 million downloads of the product. And some of the healthcare expertise that we would bring in, and saying, wow, we really could do a lot if we were to put the two together and think about consumer, enterprise, and healthcare. And that's how it all came together.
It seems like we're at a really exciting time right now where something like meditation and mindfulness meeting the idea of healthcare is becoming a lot more accepted. I mean, I noticed did a physical yesterday, and there was a discussion about what do you do to calm your mind? That
That's
never
right.
happened 10 years ago.
That's right. And I also think I love that you just brought up a physical, because in healthcare right now, we've seen the linkage between your mental health and your physical health. So for so long they were treated as separate. But the reality is, if you have physical issues, that could lead to mental health issues. And if you have mental health issues, that leads to physical issues. And that can cause the system 2 to 8 times more when they're co-linked together. So there is a lot of science behind the two, that they are interlinked. And so now people are saying, well, when you go take a physical exam, wouldn't it be great if you did a mental checkup as well and just ask, how's your mental health doing? And so often people don't do that, right? We're so trained now to do your physical, which is great, but we also check up on ourselves, on our mental health as well.
I'm located in California, and I know, just going for a physical yesterday, there was a piece of paper that did ask me some of those very basic, it was like a depression screening.
Of
And I
course.
remember a couple of years ago when my kids, I have teenagers, started going to the pediatrician and they were handed to it. I just assumed they would kind of skip over it. My kids sat there, read it, thought about it. And then as I looked over their shoulder, which is probably some sort of violation of privacy, I noticed they were honest about it. And I found that really telling, because there is a generation now where they don't have a stigma of talking about, how do you feel?
That's right. And isn't that great?
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. I mean, when we were kids, nobody talked about stuff like this.
That's right. And I believe right now that the approachability around the conversation of mental health, it's been the most approachable that it's ever been on a global basis. I mean, it's still not there in many countries. My parents live in Korea, for example. The stigma still exists. But if you're here in the US, I love the approachability. I
Mhm.
have two daughters who are 17 and 14. We have conversations around it. They may not use the terminology always correctly or overuse the term, but I love the fact that they're having the conversation. I didn't have that conversation with my parents when I was younger. I wish I did. But that was a different kind of time and era. And I just like the fact that today we can have these conversations.
I had a very similar experience to you. My parents are both from Ireland, and Irish Catholic family. Culturally, I will be honest, we didn't talk about anything,
Yeah,
anything. But watching now the generation of grandchildren with my mother, they talk about everything. I mean, it's such a gift to these younger people from here on out. And they in turn have given us a gift of finally talking about a lot of things, which I think for our health is just so unbelievably critical.
Yeah, and the conversations, even with the book I've just written, that conversation really started with my parents. I had my first panic attack when I was 14 years old. I didn't quite understand what was happening until many years later when I got into healthcare. And when I got into healthcare, I found that the tightness in my chest, the sweaty palms, everything I was going through happened because of stress-induced panic attacks. That, when I didn't understand it when I was younger, my parents who are immigrants would be just like, power through it. You'll be fine. And as we know now, that's not the right advice to give children. And then you start to develop some unhealthy behaviors. And I wish I had, products like our own Calm Today or things that you use as well that you discussed just to help us along. And I love the fact that my kids use them today.
I know it's wonderful. So your new book is called Recharge, Boosting Your Mental Battery, One Conversation at a Time. The analogy of a battery is so, and I don't mean this rudely, so dumb simple. Why did
Yeah.
we not think of this before?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so, explain it for people.
Well, it was brought to a good friend of mine. She talked about how she talked with her own kids and asking them, "How are you doing?" And the kids would always, she's got two boys. They would say, "I'm good" or "I'm fine." She couldn't get an answer from them. And then finally she said, "How's your battery?" And they would be like, "It's half charged or a quarter charged," or it'd be like, "I'm 100%." And that created a dialogue and a simplicity that we said, I'm going to run with that. And she was like, yeah, we should use that as an analogy. And every time we talk about it with someone, it takes away the heaviness of the conversation. And it just makes it a lot more open and some makes it something that everybody understands because everyone has a phone.
Yeah. And everyone knows how they feel when they go from 100 to 80 to 60. And when you dip below 50, it's like fear inducing at times.
That's right. We all know what it's like when your phone goes and shows red. And we're like, oh no, I have calls coming up, or I'm not going to be near a phone charger, and you start to stress out, and that stress is real. And we start to think about, well, every time you pick up your phone, why don't you check in on yourself? And if you just do a quick check in on yourself, how much better and would we feel over time? And I can't tell you how many people have come up to us and come to myself and said, I never thought about it this way. I wish I had thought about it this way. And now when I look at my phone 150 times a day plus and not even realize it, I remember to check up on myself at least a couple times a day when I never checked up on myself before.
So let's break down the percentages. When you are at 100 to 75, is that you're good? Like you feel
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah. When you're at 75 to 100%, you're good. You're doing fine. Keep doing what you're doing. And if you're at 50 to 75, I often tell people, you may need a quick break. You may need to go for a walk, you may need to go get some fresh air. If you find yourself lower than that, 25 to 50, it's probably time to recharge yourself. And it's probably time to have a little bit of a digital detox if you need one. It's probably time to to give you yourself some time. And if you're 25% below, it's going to take you longer to recharge, just like your battery. When your battery's at red, it takes you longer to recharge, and know that you got to give yourself a little bit more time.
And it's not all or nothing. It's not like you're saying I'm at 25 this week. You can have that throughout the day. And that is a really smart thing to do during the day.
That's right. And think about just your day, how it progresses. You may find yourself on 4 or 5 calls, if you're at the workplace. You may find yourself, shuttling kids and then having to do things for others as a caregiver. You may find yourself between sports activities for your children. There's just so many things that happen. So you go from these like 80% charge to 50 to 80%. And so it's just to recognize, take a little time for yourself.
So what does that look like for you? Like, I mean, you mentioned you've got kids, you got a big job, you got a lot of stuff going on. You got parents, so you're in the middle of this stuff. I know where you are because I'm there too. You've got lots of responsibilities. What is your mental health toolkit like? Like, how does that work for you?
Yeah, for myself, it's taken a lot of time. I realize it's not one thing. I feel when I'm at Calm, people ask me, "How you doing as CEO of Calm?" And I'm like, I am not very calm. You know, um, and I bring that up all the time,
That's so honest.
and they're just like, why? I go, well, every second of every day, someone is using our product. And that just feels there's an enormity of when I think about that, that people turn to us in their moment of need and we have to be there for them. And we're not a social product. So it's a product just for you. And that's when I thought about the battery analogy was, I need something for you that you could do really quick. And for me, I have so many different things I do throughout the day. In the morning I wake up, I don't look at my phone right away. I will make coffee because I need coffee. And then I'll open the window or I'll open the door, just get a breath of fresh air and then start the day. It's kind of like my mechanism to go.
Hmm.
Um, Throughout the day, if I find myself depleting in my own battery, I will go call someone, have a conversation because I love having conversations with people. That's in the book. I realize that's the thing that helps me to recharge on a personal basis is having
I
conversations.
liked that you included the Q&A in the book with some of the people that you interviewed. I thought that was really valuable because I really enjoyed hearing how you phrased the question within a conversation to them.
Yeah, and the first person I interviewed really set the tone for the entire book. And that was Randall Park. And when I interviewed him, not only did we have so much in common as coming from immigrant parents, but he was so vulnerable and so honest with myself. And it just got me thinking if he can do that with me in the first 5 minutes, I can do that with my employees. And I could have a better workforce going forward if I can talk about my own mental health. Because I also think if you are in the workplace, particularly, in management or CEOs of different jobs, you don't, it's hard to be vulnerable. And I think now, as I've had more conversations with more CEOs, they are showing more vulnerability in the workplace and they're recognizing that that's helping their own workforce to be more resilient, to have better retention, because they're having the conversation.
Could you give me an example of how you've done that?
Yeah, I gave an example recently at my company retreat, and I spoke to them and said, I wish we had come when I was younger, when I was in banking. So I was in investment banking. And when I was 23 years old,
Nothing calm about that profession.
no,
My
it wasn't
husband,
very
my husband
calm.
was in the field for a while too, I've heard.
And I was there for about 5 years, and I turned to some unhealthy behaviors. Um, I turned to smoking. I turned to overeating. And I just didn't know what to do when I got stressed late at night. I didn't have any techniques. No one told me go take a walk, stop working, or go talk to somebody, or how's your battery level? I mean, at that time it would have been not the same analogy, but
Yeah.
I
Can
just
you
didn't
imagine
have
what you would have
someone.
said to them if they'd asked you that question back then too?
Yeah, I would have been like, I'm on red and I need help. And I didn't really know what to turn to. And so I turned to these unhealthy behaviors, and now I turn to more healthy behaviors rather than unhealthy behaviors.
That's great. The entree for my younger son to meditation and actually to using the Calm app was a series you had with LeBron James,
Yeah.
where yeah, it was so good. And I took him outside into our garden and I said, I want 10 minutes, 10 minutes. So we just called it LeBron time. And he got into it. And I love the idea that these celebrities have also been really vulnerable and transparent because I think for a lot of people who might not think they're into mindfulness, when they find out that somebody that they see on TV does it, whether it's a singer or an athlete or whomever, it's kind of like disarming and it makes it kind of cool.
Yeah, and it makes it real.
Yeah.
So many times, you put so many of these celebrities and others, you just think they're kind of perfect. And when they come out and talk about their own vulnerability, it really has an impact on so many people, and especially children. And, even in my book where I talk to rapper, Macklemore, or I talk to different business leaders like John Scully, the former CEO of Apple, or Jack Rowe, the former CEO of Aetna, they were super vulnerable very quickly. And they just talked about their own mental health journeys. And it just made it so much more real, I think, for everybody else. around us to say, hey, everyone is going through it. Stress is all around us. You're never going to have a stress-free work environment, but it's how do we handle that stress? And there was a woman in particular in the book, Dr. Aditi Nurkar, who said, there's good stress, eustress, and bad stress, distress. And our jobs are to have more eustress over
Hmm.
distress.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is that you need stress and you need anxiety. It keeps you alive.
That's right. That's right. And if you have there's stress in at Calm when we are trying to launch new products, when we're trying to get to a deadline. And I think that stress, if you do it the right way, will build resilience. It will build retention. It will build a better team going forward. But you also, as Jack Rose said, you can't run at 100% 365. You have to know when to. I loved he used this term, Deidre, which was get out of gear. Every once in a
Yeah.
while, you got to shift down. That was his term. Get out of gear, go into neutral, get reset, and then go back. And I was like, okay, that's like my battery analogy. He's like, yeah, and he goes, for me, it was get out of gear.
Yeah. I think a lot of us, at least this is how I am, I tend to run at 10 or at 0.
Yeah,
And I need to find a 5 sometimes because a 5 is probably a healthy way to go most of the time.
that's right. That's right. And that's you getting out of gear and then figuring out ways that you recharge, right?
Yeah. What
How do you recharge?
How do I? It's interesting you asked me that. I've changed in the last few years. Pandemic was a real game changer for me, especially with what I do being in journalism and thinking that I used to think I was a very calm, relaxed, easygoing person. As it turns out, I hadn't ever been like that, you know. But the pandemic was definitely a wake up call because of what we were all dealing with. So I now have changed my routine quite a bit. I get outside. I work very early mornings, but I make sure as soon as I'm off the anchor set, I go outside. I see
Mm.
the sun, I breathe some really good deep air. So I get the outside time and I also walk in the morning. I get that movement in and I think that that also kind of calms whatever stressful stuff we might have had going on in the news, but it also centers me for the day to interact with my family in a different way. So I have done a lot of forced slowdowns and I put the phone away too. Sometimes driving home in silence with nothing to listen to or multitask with, or taking a walk around the block and actually hearing what's happening outside is just, it's enough. It doesn't take a lot sometimes, you know? And I also do some morning meditation and it's not very long. And sometimes I do it on that walk. It can be just a couple of minutes, but it's enough to just remind myself to slow it down a little bit.
That's right. One thing I've been doing with my youngest daughter, when I drive her back sometimes from dance class, is I shut off the radio. And
Yeah.
she puts her phone away. And I think sometimes just having a moment for yourself, and even though it's a quick drive,
Mm-hmm.
and it just kind of it's like it's okay. You're in
Yeah.
silence, and you're driving, and you just kind of observe things around you because you don't need stimulation 24/7. And so that was my way to tell her, here's another technique if you want to, recharge. And here's something I
Right.
sometimes do.
And it also doesn't have to be a lot. And I think that's a good thing to acknowledge as well is that sometimes that 2 minutes of quiet is really rejuvenating. And if
Oh
that's all
yeah.
it takes, why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah, and it doesn't even take that. We sometimes have a breathe bubble that's like 30 seconds. Sometimes it's just, you know, it sometimes people think meditation has to be really heavy. Oh,
Yeah.
it's 10 minutes, 7 minutes. And I'm like, no, no. I was like, do you breathe every day? And everyone's like, yeah. I'm like, that's a form of meditation. And so they're like, oh, I never thought about that. I'm like, yeah, you're meditating sometimes and you don't even know it. And so it's just being more intentional about it.
Can I ask you some nerdy questions about Calm behind the scenes?
Yeah.
What does it look like? Like what's the Calm office like? Tell me the stuff that you think I would just be flipped to know.
I think when people come to the office, they're always like, wow, I love the soothing background. We have a background in the office and we try to set up spaces where so we are remote, but we have hubs in certain cities. We get together in those hubs. And that was very intentional because we listened to our
Interesting.
employees after COVID. And I said, what are some of the things that you want? And how do we have more of an efficient workplace? And people said, we want more control over our schedule. We'll work and hit these deadlines, but we also want to be treated as an adult. And so we started creating more of a hybrid workforce. And so one of the things people will kind of see is it's very intentional on where we have these offices, the backgrounds and kind of what we have in the office itself. Um, and I think most people really appreciate that.
That's so interesting. How do meditation and mindfulness recordings, how are they put together? Like, how are scripts for something like that put together? And how do you choose voices? And what do you know are the keys to that?
Yeah,
I told you I'm nerdy. I'm nerdy,
no,
nerdy.
I love it. I love it. It was interesting. When I first joined, I would tell them, hey, I listened to Matthew McConaughey. I had the Harry Styles.
Yeah.
Uh, and now we're and Tamara Levitt, who have been staples.
Yeah.
Now it's really a lot of the Daily J, and we have so many new narrators that have joined us that are amazing and rotate through. I would tell you a lot of the magic that happens behind the scenes is because it's so personal to them. It
Hmm.
doesn't feel forced. It's very natural. Uh, I will tell you, many people that come to us today, they're coming to us. They reach out to us. They reach out to us on social media. They reach out to us and they'll say, "Hey, I'm a big fan. I want to do things more around helping people. We want to help people be on their mental health journeys every step of the way." And I love that. We have had so many people come to us, whether they've written books, spoken like yourself, have been celebrities, athletes, sports people, Olympians. We did stuff with the Olympics as well. We gave a meditation packet out to all the athletes. And I can't tell you how many of them were like, hey, can we do a sleep story? Can we do something? Because it's really personal for us. And I think when it's more personal, it's a lot more authentic. And
Yeah.
that authenticity just comes right through.
So when I went to Paris this summer to cover the Olympics, NBC, in all of our pre-Olympic training that we did, had an entire section on this is the first time they've ever done this, an entire section on mental health, how to handle the stress of the day, time commitments, you name it. And Calm was offered as part of the package.
Yeah.
It was
It was,
great.
it was so cool. We were talking about it with everyone, and everyone was just over the moon that we could support our athletes at the Olympics however we could.
It's fabulous. It's fabulous. Okay, well, we do need to wrap up. So I want to let people know about the book. What is the best way for people to learn more about the book and also keep up with everything that you're doing with Calm?
Well, obviously, if you haven't used Calm before, you can, just download it. There's obviously a free option for a trial period, and I hope you love it as much as the other 160 million people who have downloaded the product do all over the world. We're in 190 countries today in 7 different languages.
Amazing.
Um,
Amazing.
in terms of the book, it comes out on December 17th. And it'll be available on Amazon. And you can get it there. It's called Recharge, Boosting Your Mental Battery, this conversation at a time.
And then, real quickly, 3 challenges for all of us when it comes to our mindfulness and mental health.
Yeah, 3 challenges, and I'll mix it up a little. One is just put away your phone every once in a while. And sometimes it is really difficult to put away that phone because it brings your work home with you. And I find that a lot of people today just have a challenge putting away their phone. So I'll just start there. One of the first challenges is just putting away your phone, whether it's over at dinner, whether it's at lunch, whether it's just with friends and colleagues. I would say, another one is just make sure you take some time for yourself. Check in on yourself. Whenever you check in on your battery, number two, just check in on yourself. And third is when you do check out on yourself, check in on a friend or a loved one as well. And if you can just do that throughout the day, whether there's challenges and you turn them into positive, behaviors going forward, that's what we really hope for.
All right, my battery's like pretty high today. How about you?
Mine after this conversation is at 100%.
Yes. David, I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing, not only professionally, but also personally taking on the book. I know it's a lot of work, but it sounds like you got a lot out of it too. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Deirdre Fitzpatrick, morning news anchor and host of Dying to Ask. My guest wrote the book, launched the product, won the race, or cracked the ultimate life hack to live bigger by living smarter.
This opened up a door and things will never be the same again.
One thing I've learned is that you have to think it before you can do it. Join me for the podcast that pulls back the curtain on the people who turn big dreams into real life success.
Isn't that an awesome thing to be able to say about any career?
Subscribe to Dying to Ask wherever you listen to podcasts.